Hunger was a national issue in the early 80s and was recognized by traveler Ray DeKemper Jr., who saw a need to feed poor Americans, especially those in his own community of Lubbock. A group of community leaders in coordination with the United Way of Lubbock were brainstorming how to address hunger in Lubbock. Ray DeKemper was the catalyst that pulled the vision of a food bank together. Established in 1983, the South Plains Food Bank addressed the critical issue of hunger in the community by distributing donations of surplus food and grocery products through partner agencies like the Salvation Army in Lubbock. Ray served as the first board president. He purchased the building and donated it to the food bank, and he hired Carolyn Lanier as the first executive director and guaranteed her first year's salary. Carolyn had been working alongside Louise Cummins at the City of Lubbock. Carolyn took Ray's vision of the South Plains Food Bank and turned it into a reality by connecting with the passion of the people, especially those who had experienced hunger firsthand. She became a leader and an advocate for hunger, rallying the Lubbock community for 14 dedicated years. Her enthusiasm and ability to connect with the community made the organization a quick success. Many said, "I just couldn't say no to her." Her famous stories have become a rich part of the food bank's history.
When Reader's Digest did a story about food banks, a committee was set up to see if something like that might happen in Lubbock, and I was the director of human relations for the city. About that time, Ray DeKemper said, "Well, I found a building that would work, but we must find a director." And Louise said, "Well, I think that Carolyn would do it." And I said, "Louise, I'm really happy working with all of these people." And so she said, "Well, Carolyn, this would be a part-time job." I thought, well, okay, is there no one else? And Ray called me and he said, "Look, I'll pay your salary." And I said, "Well, I'll work for half since it's a part-time job." He bought this building, and we wrote a grant to the Davidson Foundation to buy a truck. And we went to the Davidson Foundation, and they said, "Okay, we'll give you $6,000 on it, but it costs $12,000. So Ray said, "Well, I'll buy the front half of the truck, and we'll let them buy the back half of the truck." Well, one of the first problems was getting rid of some of the wonderful products that we got. For instance, Frito-Lay would give us 40,000 pounds of potatoes. They would fry one potato, and if it was too brown, the sugar content was wrong. So they would send 40,000 pounds of potatoes here. And the phone rang, and it was a woman who said, "My name is Alpha Campbell. I'm 88 years old." And Mrs. Campbell knows she talked like that. And she said, darling, I need a sweet potato." And I said, "Oh, Mrs. Campbell, I have 40,000 pounds of white potatoes, but I don't have any sweet potatoes." She said, "Darling, take my name and number. I'm praying for a sweet potato. My daddy always said eat a sweet potato every fall, and I haven't had one this whole year." But I hated to think about Mrs. Campbell praying to God and God looking bad. So I thought, okay, Gilbert Sanchez ran the dock for me here. And I came out and I said, "Gilbert, I need to get my car out, so I'm going to go spend 15 cents and buy her one." He said, "Well, just a minute, I'll get your car." But in the meantime, a huge 18-wheeler was backing up. And Gilbert said, "Stop, stop, Carolyn needs to get her car out." And this big, burly guy got out. He said, "Hell no." He said, "If you don't want this, I'm taking it to the dump." Well, that scared me. So I said, wait, what have you got?" And he threw the back of the truck up. And it was case after case, 42,000 pounds of sweet potatoes. And I ran back to the office and I called Mrs. Campbell. And I said, "Mrs. Campbell, stop praying." We have just gotten 42,000 pounds of sweet potatoes, and we had 40,000 pounds of white potatoes. She said, I hope they're little ones. I hate them big ones. And that's when I realized that God knows what size sweet potatoes you want. He may know how many hairs are on your head.
The food bank began with a 5,000 square foot warehouse, 1 truck, and 28 agencies. It quickly doubled in size over 1 year and continues to grow. In the food bank's first year, over 1 million pounds of food was distributed. Since 1983, the food bank has given out over 150 million meals to hungry people across 20 counties in the South Plains and continues to reach 86,000 elderly, children, and families each year.
The first building was I can't remember exactly how we came to get it, except that Ray was in negotiation about it and he was able to buy the building. It was just really a great big warehouse. It didn't have offices, it didn't have partitions. It did have a cooler, as I recall, and that was one of the reasons we were interested in it. Some of the challenges that the steering committee looked at and that they faced in the early beginning was, number one, getting a staff person, a person who could be the on-site manager. That was important. It was important to build collaboration in the community, and those were challenges. Money, of course, is always a huge problem, and the fact that Mr. DeKemper was willing to buy that first building, to pay Carolyn Lanier's salary, to do all of those things, those were incredible challenges. Hunger is such a dramatic thing in the lives of people. When people are not able to get enough food so that they can function, it has a great impact on the community. It has an impact on children that are sent to school and they can't concentrate because they haven't had an adequate meal. There are ways that I think most of us who have plenty to eat simply can't understand what it must be like to be hungry. Looking back over these first 30 wonderful years of the food bank, it's very heartening to see what has happened, and it's very important that we say thank you to all of the people those people who were in on the ground floor, those people who are working here today, people who have volunteered, people who give money. That kind of support is so important. And although we would love to be able to say that we have done our job so well that we're going to go out of business, I doubt that that will ever happen. We are always going to have people in need of food and the kinds of support that they get at the food bank. And so it's so important as we look forward that we build on the successes of the past, that we learn from some of the times that we failed, and that we move forward to really see if we can build and continue to build and be the most important and the most wonderful food bank in the United States of America.
In 1988, the first food bank community garden was planted and harvested by volunteers. Over years, the garden grew into the Lanier Farm. A CSA program was established, and GRUB, an entrepreneurial youth initiative, was created to reach out to young volunteers. In 1994, an apple orchard was planted by Dr. George Ellie. Today, the farm and orchard produces thousands of pounds of fruits and vegetables for the food bank and employs 21 youth interns.
Well, Ray was a very interesting person, had many interests. He loved to travel. He was very aware of, after growing up as a child, a young person during the Depression, what it was to go from plenty to go to want. The work for the food bank actually began when Ray decided, he came back and reported and said, Lubbock needs a food bank and we need to do it right now and get started on it. And there were people like Skip Watson who, well, donated so much time and so many creative ideas to promoting the food bank. And the board of directors they all worked so hard and getting this concept explained to the community and its needs. And they were all really 100% workers for the food bank. I think Ray would be extremely proud of the organization and how it's grown. And particularly the farms, the apple orchards, the youth program, because people who have been involved with that have really worked. And that's particularly of special interest to me. The West Texas people have always come through. I think it goes back to the old pioneer days of neighbors helping neighbors. And I think the food bank has always given food and gifts with dignity and allowed those who are receiving it to have a sense of dignity in receiving it. I think the next 30 years for the food bank are going to be really fascinating to see.
The South Plains Food Bank is proud of 30 years of accomplishments and could not have done it without the support of Lubbock and the surrounding communities and the many people throughout the years who have made it a success. An amazing seed was planted 30 years ago when the South Plains Food Bank was established, and today the organization continues to grow and thrive. Today we pass the legacy to the next generation, promising that for years to come our community can continue our mission to alleviate hunger and give hope to the hungry.